In a landmark move, the Supreme Court is taking up a major Second Amendment case that will consider how much protection the Second Amendment provides for carrying a gun outside the home. And as always, joining us with his legal wisdom is David Hoffman, founder of the Hoffman Law Firm. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
New week, a new issue. And this is the first time in more than a decade that the nation's highest court is hearing a case involving one of the most controversial amendments to our Constitution.
Well, yeah, this is kind of a big deal. The Supreme Court, I think the last time they really got into something big with the Second Amendment was in the 1930s, and it was about whether or not you could take a sawed-off shotgun across state lines. The Second Amendment is one of those, it's a very polarizing issue. You have gun rights activists, you have, people opposing gun rights. Where you have to start is the Constitution itself. Everybody talks about the Constitution. It's the framework by which we even have this conversation today, because the Second Amendment provides what people now interpret the right to bear arms. But what I've got here is I'm going to read you the Second Amendment. Now, just so that I don't mess anything up, I'm actually going to look down and I've got it right here. Okay. And this is what the Second Amendment says. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So if you're confused about what does the Constitution mean, what you then do is you go and you look at the Federalist Papers. That's where Alexander Hamilton and the other framers of the Constitution actually wrote their notes on what they meant. They wrote out what they were debating, if somebody agreed or disagreed. And from that, you can tell generally which one of the Bill of Rights or which article in the Constitution was how to interpret it. If you want to go by what the framers' intent, you always hear that. What were the framers' intent? Well, if you look at the Second Amendment, it has nothing to do with the right to bear arms. It is about a militia. The disagreement over the Second Amendment, the disagreement was, how do you maintain the militia? Is it a state militia, or does the federal government get to somehow control the militia? And this is the part where it gets really interesting to me. The biggest concern that the founding fathers had back in the 18th century, the biggest concern that they had was a large army, a government-run army. That's what they did. They wanted to avoid that at all costs. So they wanted to arm certain members, not all. They wanted to arm certain members of the citizenry to be able to take up arms in the form of a militia. The founding fathers did not believe if you were not in the militia, you had the right to carry a firearm. That is not what the founding fathers believed. Yeah. Only if you were in the militia. And now look at today. It's so hard to associate the true language and the framers' intent of the Second Amendment to today. We have the largest, most powerful army in the entire world, and we have for a long, long time.
Right. And you have such strong opinions on both sides as to whether or not private citizens should even own a gun.
That's
but going back to this case, though, what is it exactly that they're arguing? Because as it stands, gun rights, they're out there. People do have the right to own a gun. But this particular case, maybe you can give us a little background on this.
Well, the background on it is when you read the Second Amendment, the first clause talks about the militia. The second clause says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So what people are doing is they are separating that amendment into the first clause versus the second clause. They're trying to read them separately. Okay. So I've got to back up to 2008. Washington, D.C., this is the District of Columbia versus Heller. It's a 2008 Supreme Court case. It's the first one in over 12 years that the Supreme Court has agreed to take up. The one in New York is the first one. Heller was the complete and total ban in Washington, D.C. on even owning a firearm. And Antonin Scalia, writing for the majority, said, listen, just because the framers never acknowledged an individual right to bear arms doesn't mean they weren't thinking about it. So he had to really do some legal maneuvering to come up with this individual right to bear arms, because it doesn't exist in the Constitution. All right. So fast forward to today, New York. What New York is, so you've got two distinctions. You've got open carry, which is like the Wild West, gun on your hip, right? And you've also got concealed. New York bans open carry, which a lot of states do. That's not the issue. It's their statute that regulates concealed carry is very, very difficult to prove the need for. You have to prove that you are in more danger. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but you've got to prove that you're in more danger and that your need for protection is greater than others. Because
and challengers to that say that it is almost impossible to get a concealed carry license. But this is a good place to take a break, David, because when we come back, I want to talk about what the laws are here in South Carolina and what the perceived result of the Supreme Court's looking at this case is going to be. I want to see if you can bring out your crystal ball and tell us what you think. So we're going to do that.
Great topics, because I actually do have a pretty strong opinion on that.
All right. We'll hear it after this. Welcome back. David Hoffman, our guest. He's the founder of the Hoffman Law Firm, and we have been poring over this case that is now being taken up by the Supreme Court over the Second Amendment. And you were just deciphering exactly what it was that this case was about, open versus concealed carry. And you said that most states in the union, they do not allow for open carry. Can you tell us what South Carolina's laws are currently? Just had some new stuff pop up in the last several.
Yeah, sure. South Carolina, it's open carry for a handgun is prohibited. Open carry for a long rifle is okay. Concealed weapon is okay in South Carolina. But again, the issue in New York was you had to go that extra step. It wasn't just a matter of getting a permit. You had to prove additional things, and that's where the issue has come up. Now, something that's really interesting that my lawyer crystal ball has to pass on. About a week and a half ago, there were several gun cases in front of the Supreme Court, and they were trying to make a decision on which ones to bring up, and they passed on all of them. This New York case, however, was in front of them then, and then they came out saying, okay, we're going to take this one, right? So what that tells me is that they passed on those other cases so that they could take on a case that had a much bigger impact. We now have, it's ironic to me that now they've agreed to take this one. They typically don't take Second Amendment cases. Clarence Thomas has called Second Amendment cases the orphan case of the Supreme Court because they don't take these cases. This is a big deal in the legal world.
So depending on how the court rules, how will this affect gun owners?
Well, it's only going to affect gun owners in New York.
Okay.
But if the
it sets a precedent.
Right. If the Supreme Court says that concealed weapons bans or an increased level of scrutiny on whether or not they're a ban or not, if they come along and they do that, then ostensibly other states can pass laws that make it very strict, and the Supreme Court would back them up as precedent, as you say. So that's but I have a feeling that the New York ban, not the ban, it's not a ban. I want to make sure I'm speaking correctly. The New York requirements for proof, I think, are going to be declared unconstitutional. That is just my opinion.
Oh, that is very interesting. How soon do you think we'll hear a ruling?
Oh, they're not going to hear it until next fall, and
okay.
So it'll be a while.
So we're looking way down the road here.
At least I would say at least another year.
Okay.
But I don't think it's coincidence that they're now taking it. When they had several gun cases in front of them a week ago, and they passed on all of those, and so nobody thought anything. And then all of a sudden, boom! They say that they're gonna talk about the New York one.
Well, this should be really fascinating, and we're definitely going to be keeping our eye on this. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again as we lead up into the fall, once they start discussing it and more information starts coming out. So I look forward to that. David, as always, thank you so much.
It's been a 300-year process, and we will keep it going.
Yes, we will. I can't promise I'm going to live for another 300 years, but
we'll do our best.
We'll do our best. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
We're back after this.